this question, we want to use the ISLM diagram to show how crowding out occurs. Now, for this, let's recall what crowding out is. Crowding out occurs when expansionary fiscal policy, it could be an increase in G or a reduction in T. It causes an increase in interest rates, which crowds out private sector investment. So now we'll in detail explore how the increase in G results in this crowding out. For this, let's make our ISLM diagram first, and then we'll understand the entire process of the increase in G. So let's make our ISLM diagram over here. Right, so let's make our ISLM diagram here. So this is our downward sloping IS curve, this is our upward sloping LM curve, right? So now so we start here. No, okay, so let's just keep this. On the vertical axis, we're taking the real interest rate. Real interest rate R. On the horizontal axis, we have Y. So this is Ln and this is Is. So this is our initial equilibrium at A, where the interest rate, where the interest rate is, where the interest rate is, R star and output is Y star. So let's start. Initial equilibrium is at A. So then what happens is, let's do it step by step, right? Initial equilibrium is at A. The first thing that happens is G increases, right? For this demand, we know increases for any given hour. You know, when G increases, demand increases for any given hour, right? So we know graphically, that means basically the idea is that because Z is C plus I plus G, right? So one of the component, okay, wait, let me. So G increases, demand increases for any given hour because we know Z is C plus I plus G, right? So one of the components of demand increases, demand increases. Now graphically that means, right, the demand schedule shifts upwards, demand schedule shifts upwards in the goods market diagram or model, in the goods market model. So you know, when G increases, demand increases for any given hour, demand shifts upwards in goods market model for any shifts upwards for any given hour. Let me just add for any given hour, right? Demand shifts upwards for any given hour. As a result of this, what happens is we know G increases, demand increases for any given hour, Y increases again for any given hour. And that holds true for the initial level of R, right? Including the initial level of R. Including the initial level of R, which is R star, right? So any given level R, including the initial level of R. Basically, essentially, this is what we mean when we say the IS curve shifts to the right, right? That's why the IS curve shifts to the right. Because when G increases, demand increases for any given R. So Y increases for any given R. And we know let's just change the color a bit. So the IS curve shifts to the right, we know, right? That's how that happens. This is IS prime. So now we know what has happened is we initially started at this point A, then G increased, which caused demand increase to in for any given hour, and that caused essentially output to increase for any given hour, right? Including the initial level of R, which is R star. So output is increased for every level of R, including the initial level of R star, right? So let's just name this YB, right? And let's call this P. Now what happens is, so essentially the idea is that we move from point A to point B. So here we move from point A to point B. So we move from point A to point B, Y star to YB, right? So this is the first thing that happens. Right, so we start off at point A, then G increases, demand increases for any given hour, so output increases for any given hour, including the initial level of interest rate R star, so that's the movement from A to B, right? So now let's look at the next thing that happens. So this is the first effect that we're seeing. So we move from point A to point B. Let's just make those arrows. So we're moving from point A to point B. Now let's see what happens next. Keep in mind, eventually our goal is to show how in the increase in G translates into the crowding out effect. So we'll look at that. We're looking at it in full detail to understand all of the steps. Okay, so the next thing that's going to happen is now. So now the next thing that's going to happen is due to increase in Y, there's a spillover effect due to increase in Y, spillover effect from goods market to money market. So we have a spillover effect from goods market to money market because we know money demand is a function of Y, right? So the increase in Y that we saw to money market, right? The increase in Y that we saw, right, which moved us from A to B, that has a spillover effect in the money market because money demand depends upon Y. The idea is that Y increases, real money demand increases, because remember L is a function of R and Y. Real money demand increases. Now, graphically, if we just try to understand this graphically, we know the real money demand curve shifts to the right in the money market diagram. Real money demand curve shifts to the right in the money market diagram. Right, so the real money demand increases, right? Which basically means that the real money demand curve shifts to the right in the money market diagram. Now, for a given level of real money supply, we know this causes an increase in interest rates. And I'm going to go into too much detail. For a given level of real money supply, right, R increases to restore money market equilibrium. If I quickly just show the graph here, like our money market diagram, right, this was our real money supply. This is our real money demand LRY. This is R here, and this is M by P here. We have real money balances here. Right. So over here, we know, okay, the real money demand curve shifts to the right, right? When real money demand increases, the real money demand curve shifts to the right. And we can see that results in given the level of real money supply, that results in an increase in R to restore money market equilibrium, right? So that's the second step. So the second thing that happens, Y initially increased, when G increased, Y increased, we move from point A to B. But that increase in Y has a spillover effect in the money market because money demand is a function of Y. Now this increase in R, right? R increases over here. Now the third step is going to be, we will have a spillover effect from the money market to the goods market. Why? Because investment depends upon R, right? So let's look at the third thing that's going to happen. So now what's going to happen is, so we're coming now closer to explaining crowding out. So the third thing is that due to increase in R, we have a spillover effect from money market to goods market. Spillover effect from money market to goods market because investment is a function of R. From money market to goods market. Why? Because when R increases, I goes down. And here let's recall that I is a negative function of R, right? So when R goes down, I goes up, right? So I goes down, this is essentially where the crowding out is not going to come. So as a result of this, demand decreases, again, because investment is also one of the components of demand, like Z is C plus I plus G, right? So when I goes down, demand goes down. Here it's not for a given R because it is happening because of R, right? Initially when G changed, demand changed for a given R. So we said output changed for a given R and that was a movement from A to B. Here when demand goes down, it is because of R, right? Because R increased, investment went down and demand decreased. That's why we're not writing for a given R here. So graphically, again, the demand schedule. Here now the demand schedule shifts down, right? Demand schedule shifts down in goods market model, right? It's going to shift down. And we know when the demand schedule shifts down in goods market model, that causes a reduction in y, right? If we recall, this is the 45-degree line, this is z, so z goes down, z to z prime, so we can see that means there's a decrease in y, right? So graphically, when demand decrease, so that graphically is depicted by the demand schedule shifting down in the goods market model. This partially reduces y. Again, it doesn't completely, but it will partially reduce the y, because y went from y star to yb. Now y is partially reduced. This partially reduces. So full y is not going to fully reduce. There's still going to be net positive effect on y. This partially reduces y. We now move from point B to point A prime, which is the final point, right? So we're moving from YB to Y star prime. Now let's show this in the figure. So we're at B, and then we finally move to A prime, right? So this is A prime. So we started at A, we went to B, where when G increased, demand increased for any given R, Y increased for any given R, including the initial level of our R star, that was a movement from A to B. Now, because Y increased, there was a spillover effect in the money market because money demand is a function of Y. That increase in Y caused money demand to increase, which for a given level of money supply caused interest rates to increase. Now, the increase in interest rate had a spillover effect in the goods market, where investment went down, demand went down, and this partially reduced Y to Y star prime. Right? So, this is what is happening over here. So now we can see the increase in G now crowds out private sector investments. This is how we're shown it. Let's just erase this and write it down. So we've actually shown now crowding out because the increase in G resulted in increase in interest rate, which reduced investment and that partially reduced Y, and thus offsetting the total impact on Y, which is the crowding out effect. Let's just write this more neatly. We'll write this again. Right. So basically now what we're saying it. So the increase in G crowds out private investment through increase in interest rate. Thus limiting total increase in Y. Or it does partially reduce the increase in Y. Right? Because what happened over here was, this was, sorry, Y star B. What happened here was initially, the output went from Y to Y star B. But then because the crowding out, the interest rate increase, investment went down and demand went down, output went down, so there was a slight decrease, right? So this is essentially the crowding out effect. This much is graphically the crowding out effect. The difference between YB, Y star, uh, not B, this should not be Y star B, this is just YB. Between YB, the difference between YB and Y star prime is the crowding out effect, right? Limiting the total increase in output y. The difference between, here then we can mention the difference between YB and Y star prime represent the crowding out effect. Right, so we have, and this is essentially this, okay, so graphically, let's just quickly see. This was first step, right, where when G increased, demand increased, when we given our Y increased, when we given our, including the initial level. Now, because of this increase in Y, we know money demand increased, so interest rates increased, which reduced investment and demand and hence output. So this is 2 plus 3 that we saw. Right, so in this way, we can use ISLM diagram to depict crowding out. This happens because of the spillover effects that you see from one market to the other.